Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My name is Dawood Yasin. I welcome you all here from Zaytuna College as we have another part of our series, The Courageous Five, Stories of Iconoclasts in the Quran. I've been asked to speak about the story of Musa alayhi salam, or Moses, and there are so many stories inside of the stories in the Quran that we could focus on, but there are three main areas that inshallah I will address in our time. But the first aspect that I want to speak about is really this concept that we can determine the narrative that we want to understand the story of Musa alayhi salam. It can be a story that we only see the genocide, that we only see the tyranny, that we only see the oppression, but there's another reality to it. And I feel this reality is something that's consistent throughout the life of Musa alayhi salam. And it is a concept in our tradition of Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. That sufficient for me is my Lord, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He is the best of protectors. And I think back to the years, about 18 years ago, when I had my first Ramadan as a convert to Islam. And I would sit in my home by myself after returning from being abroad and read the Quran before going to work, and then coming home after work. And I remember the story of Musa alayhi salam just speaking to me in so many ways, this idea of Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, that Allah is sufficient for you and that He is the best of protectors. And when I think about this story, and you think about how it began to unfold, and how through as we talked about, looking at the tyranny and looking at these other aspects, but the reality of how does Musa ascend to or overcome these tribulations that he's faced with. We could think of it as a story of separation from his mother. We could think of it as a separation from, a society in which he knew he's placed into a home. But let's take it from here. How is it that with the tyranny that we understand from Pharaoh, that he had seen in this dream, as narrated on the hadith of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, that it says that he sees a dream. And in that dream, the homes of the people of Egypt are filled with fire. But the homes of the people of Bani Israel are not. So he consults those, around his court and asks, how do I understand this? And he says that they tell him that this will be the end of your reign. So as we understand that this counsel is given, and they make a decision to take the lives of all of the infants of the children of Israel for every year. And then they understand that who will serve us? So a decision is made then that every other year. And look at this, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, again playing itself out. That Musa has a brother who is also a prophet, whose name is Harun alayhi salam. Through the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Harun is born in the year when they are not committing this genocide. But when you look at Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil specific to Musa, he's born in a year when they are taking the lives of children. So right from the beginning, with all that is happening, when everything looks dark, when an end is imminent, the reality is that there is the manifest, and then there is the reality with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think for me, that's what spoke to me the most about this story. As I would sit and read this about Musa alayhi salam, is that how can it be that when it seems that everything is crumbling around you, and when that everything is against you, and that all of these things are there, the hardship that his mother must face in releasing her son, his sister saying that she heard, that perhaps he was alive after, the basket is placed into the river, that it comes to the hand of the person who is fearful of his destruction, that his hands are the hands that bring him into his house. And then that the love is placed in the heart of his wife, Asiyah, that she says that, La taqtuluhu, don't kill him. Perhaps we can take some benefit from it, or he will be like a child to us. I mean, this to me is the ultimate manifestation of Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. And this is what we should be looking at the times that we are in now. Which narrative are we going to look at, and which narrative are we going to believe to be the one that is real? The narrative that we are hearing about in terms of those that are trying to, attack, our faith, or us even personally as individuals. That's a reality, and that is happening right now. But don't misunderstand that that's never happened before, or that there haven't been places. And this is the thing I think about when we talk about the iconoclasts and their struggles that they come through, is that we don't have to think that we're going to have the same struggles of them contextually. That's important in the time that we're thinking about right now, because the challenges may be the same, but in a different context, and also to a different degree. And that's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not give us a challenge greater than we can bear. Because if He did, then that would be oppression. And Allah doesn't oppress any of His servants. So in this beginning, this idea again that Musa alayhi salam is divinely chosen to convey this message. And we can talk about it in terms of the divine protection, but again, what I like to pull from this, as I said, what I like to understand from this is that regardless of what the situation looks like, regardless of what the odds are, and if you look at each one of the iconoclasts in this, you'll find a similar situation in each one of their lives. That when it looked like, whether it was Badr for the Prophet ﷺ, or whether it was when Ibrahim was being cast into the fire, or when Isa alayhi salam was, when they tried to take his life, or when Nuh alayhi salam, when it looked like the people were going to turn against him and no one was going to follow, all of these things, then all of those times, at that moment, that's when the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes. And this is something that we have to be very cognizant of and aware of, is that Allah is going to continually put us in a situation, right, in which we will look back and we will understand, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Sufficient for me is my Lord, and He is the best of protectors. So this is something that I want to remind myself. This is something that I want to remind my family. This is something that I want to remind my colleagues. This is something I want to remind the students here. And this is something that I hope all of us can take away from this Ramadan, that if there's one aspect of something that I want to look at of myself and reflect on during this month, is to really look at this, Hasbunallah, sufficient for me is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if I lose certain things, or whether they be materially or whatever they may be, that sufficient for me, as long as my relationship with my Lord remains and is intact and there is sincerity, then Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Sufficient for me is Allah, and He is the best of protectors. Regardless of what the situation looks like outwardly, that there is an inward reality of which all of us can connect with, in which all of us can find solace in which all of us have to be a refuge to return to, such as we will see, inshallah, in the next part when we talk about specifically of some of the engagements and interactions that Musa alayhi salam had. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.